we go. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Nightmare Stories of the Otherside. Tonight, we welcome back Mitch Goth, who is one of the authors of 30 Haunted Nights in Wisconsin. Welcome back, Mitch, and how have you been lately?
Hi, great to be back. And been great recently. I've just been out promoting the book, talking all about it, sharing some stories about producing it, and yeah, it's just been a great time getting out and talking to people about all the spooky, ghostly adventures that there are to have in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a great book. I'm probably about halfway through, I think. I kind of read a little bit every morning with my coffee, and so
Awesome,
far, enjoying it.
great.
So, for this book, what was the thought process of picking Wisconsin for this book?
So it was kind of a natural next step for Haunted US, the organization that I write articles for each week, to make a book. And both the founder of the website and I are from Wisconsin. We live in Wisconsin. And so if we wanted to write a paranormal travel guidebook, where would be the best place to start? Wisconsin. And so we both came together and thought that a paranormal travel guidebook would be, the best next step for the website's brand and for both of our goals, myself as a writer and the founder, Brandon, as a photographer, is to produce this book. And so we both knew Wisconsin stories very well, having been born and raised here. And so it was just the easiest first step to make, starting with Wisconsin. But of course, 30 haunted nights in Wisconsin could easily be 30 haunted nights in Illinois or 30 haunted nights in Minnesota someday. So hopefully we are able to get to all the other 49 states and find 30 spooky stories in each of them.
That would be awesome. So, for you personally, like for the book, what would be your favorite region of Wisconsin? I know you're from down in the Janesville area,
Yeah.
but would that be like your favorite, or would it be, elsewhere?
You know, region is interesting because, of course, I have my a lot of good stories and a lot of memories from South Central Wisconsin, where I'm from. But and the book itself is divvied up into different regions for the folks out there who might be interested in reading it. And out of all those regions, it's difficult to pick just one because I know some great stories in South Central Wisconsin. I know many, many spooky stories in Milwaukee in the southeastern region. The northern area, the woodsy, deep north of Wisconsin, is just so full of legends and lore. But my favorite might be the peninsula, Door County. For a very, very small amount of land. It's just a tiny piece of land there. There's just so many stories and so much history, and the sites you get to see, spooky and otherwise, are kind of one of a kind. And they're not the kind of things you expect to see in a Midwestern state like Wisconsin. And it's just full of interesting, ghostly places, interesting roadside oddities. And it's all really, really close together. You just travel into Door County and things start to get spooky.
So, what are some of the spookiest tales in Door County? I've been up there probably two or three times now, and it's like I've never really known any of the stories, so I just kind of don't associate that area of Wisconsin with the paranormal.
Yeah, and it's super understandable not to necessarily consider the spookiest part of Wisconsin as Door County, because for folks who might not have been there before, it's very scenic. It's very kind of vacation-y. It's all, like I said, it's a peninsula, so it's all almost shoreside. It's very, kind not too touristy, but it's vacation-y. It's the kind of place you would go to escape scary stories most
Yeah.
of the time, but it has its fair share. And as far as buildings and places you can go, you've got the Shipwrecked Brew Pub, which actually burned down um, almost 10 years ago. I want to say it was 2017. And they have had ghost stories for a very long time. The property was developed into a kind of stagecoach stop and pub in the 1880s, back when it was a very kind of rough and tumble mining community. And Sorry, my cat is making noise back there. 2 seconds.
No, you're good.
So it all started on that property back in the 1880s, and developed a lot of interesting history. It had been a pub for generations by the time Prohibition became the law of the land. And so, of course, it stayed a pub. It was called a restaurant, but stories say that Al Capone took a controlling interest in the pub and ended up killing some IRS agents who hunted him down up there and buried them underneath this pub. And he even supposedly killed one of his illegitimate sons and buried them close to this property. So now all of these spirits from that era supposedly haunt this building. And even when the property burned down around 2017, people started to wonder, are the ghosts going to stick around? Are they going to stay on this property? Is that how hauntings work? Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. And they rebuilt the pub almost as close as they possibly could to what it was before. So Shipwrecked Brew Pub is still a place you can visit. Brand new building, and they say many of the ghosts still remain almost exactly where they were before, doing almost exactly what they were doing before, haunting the same areas of the building, doing the same things, manifesting in the same ways, which is really interesting that the entire building burned down and was gone and then came back, and so did the ghosts. And that's a really interesting place you can find in Door County. And if you move a little bit further north and catch a ferry all the way to Washington Island at the tip top of Door County, the very, very end of the peninsula, there's a little bar called Nelson's up on Washington Island. And Nelson's is interesting for a lot of reasons. It's a bitters pub, because they're famous for their just straight shots of bitters, just orange bitters. And it's disgusting, but it's tradition. And the story behind Nelson's is that once again, it started as a pub prior to Prohibition, and then when Prohibition became law, they came up with a interesting workaround. They billed themselves as a medicinal pharmacy, and only started selling straight bitters to people. And their pitch to the law enforcers enforcing Prohibition was that no recreational alcohol drinker is just going to take a shot of straight bitters. It's only the people who have a medicinal need for it. And the local legend is that they took it all the way to court and they handed a shot of bitters to the judge. And the judge took this shot and said, no paying customer is going to pay for this. You get your pharmacy license. Like, if all this is all you're selling, you can sell it as medicine, because we don't believe that anyone would come here and drink this for fun. And to this day, lots of people go to Nelson's and drink a shot of bitters for fun. And the person who founded the property, Tom Nelson, is now the main ghost there. He'll sit at the bar with people. He'll whisper into ears. He'll follow certain people down hallways and tap on their shoulders. So he's kind of a mischievous mystery up there. But
Nice.
there's lots of mystery. Once you have to take a ferry to get someplace,
Yeah,
you never know what's on the other side.
right. So speaking of other areas in Wisconsin that I wouldn't myself deem paranormal. So we were just in Wisconsin Dells back in August, and I was just reading through that the Showboat Salon.
Yeah,
I wouldn't, or a saloon, sorry. I would never like, I'm like, hey, I recognize that building. I just walked by there like 2 months ago. So
yeah, and it definitely does not look much like the rest of Wisconsin Dells, it doesn't really look haunted. It's very brightly colored. It's very lively inside. I think we were there in the middle of the day, and the place was packed with people. I think there was a jazz band playing, so it's a very lively atmosphere. But I think the ghosts there really do a certain amount to contribute to that.
Yeah, so it's like now it's like I want to go back and like go check that place out because we didn't actually go inside. We just, as I said, walked by and went to other areas on Main Street there.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a stop in. It's usually pretty crowded and loud, so you know a lot of ghost stories involve little tiny taps and whispered voices. So it's kind of a difficult place to hear or experience most of the time. But they used to shout out their ghost in their name. I believe it used to be Ghost Molly's Showboat
Yep.
Saloon.
Yeah.
So they're very proud of their ghost, and I like to hope that their ghost is very proud of them.
Oh, I'm sure. And another place that I've been trying to get to, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on Shaker's Cigar Bar in Milwaukee.
Yeah, Shakers is a very interesting. Once again, this is Wisconsin. It's a bar that existed before Prohibition and became a speakeasy when Prohibition became law. It also has a Al Capone connection, but more recently, it's been known as Shaker's Cigar Bar, and it's one of the few cigar bars in Milwaukee, if not like the only one, where you can actually stop in and still smoke indoors. So a lot of people go there for the novelty of that and to get some darn decent drinks. I've been there a few times, and it's always a great atmosphere. It's all set up as an old school kind of jazzy speakeasy. But as you're approaching the building, probably what most people notice is the big bright neon in the upper floors, the neon ghost signs. They're very very happy with their ghost stories, and they put up big old neon signs of ghosts up in their windows. So all night, every night, you can see these big glowing ghosts in their windows. And when you go in, they have a lot of stories about their ghosts, and you can take tours through. I think it's called Hangman Tours. The property does tours through them that go through the basement and all the way up to the top floor, because back when Shakers was a speakeasy, there was a brothel on the upper floors, and the story goes that one night a prostitute took a client up to the top floor bedroom, and the client, a young man, ended up murdering her, and because it was the top floor, they had booked it all night. No one else had reason to go up there. So he spent his time chopping her into little pieces and burning her in the fire pit, in the fireplace that's there. And a lot of people thought that was just kind of a legend, a spooky story that built up over time. But when they were renovating the building, ripping down a lot of the walls up there, they found what looked like charred bones hidden in the wall beside the fireplace, and they could never really identify where it all came from. But the story goes is that's her remains left over from that murder, and the place is just chock full of ghost stories. I know when we were there taking our tour, the co-author Brandon had a kind of spooky experience. He saw a misty kind of apparition figure on the staircase. But it's definitely a place worth stopping into, either just for a drink or for a ghost tour. Both of them are great and super memorable.
Yeah, because I can't remember if it was over the phone or last time I was at Farrar Elementary. One of the people that worked there said they had a group from, I think it was the Netherlands, came through and did the overnight at Farrar, but they
Hmm.
were at Shakers at the night before,
Yeah.
and they only lasted like 15 minutes, he said, and they were out. So I don't, he says they didn't really elaborate on what happened, but they said they would never go back.
Yeah, and that's one of those places where it could have been almost anything. They could have seen a shadowy figure, they could have heard something, or something could have moved. The ghosts that are supposedly in the basement there are known for picking up a big, heavy safe, like 1,500 pounds, and just shoving that around the basement. So, anything is really possible.
Yeah, but for them to like not be able to spend the night there, but then they could survive the
Could do
night somewhere,
Farrar,
kind
right?
of like has me wondering what really happened there.
Yeah.
So for the going on to the book, like what would be like the favorite place you've investigated in Wisconsin that you touched on in the book?
That's touched on in the book, probably the Lincoln Tallman House right here in Janesville. Um, and I say that simply because it took such a long time to get them to say yes to an investigation in the first place. And it ended up being a super memorable experience when we were there. I had started reaching out to them, trying to gauge their interest on their ghost stories. Because it's been open for tours, for historical tours, since 1950 or 1951. But they've never been really that open with ghost tours or anything like that. But as people take regular tours of the building, some people report strange experiences. Um, and after all those years, they've started to accumulate. And so I really wanted to get in there and investigate what all those people had said. And I started reaching out around 2011, just to try and get an answer. Maybe a nighttime tour, just an opportunity of walking through the building with a digital recorder and nothing else.
Yeah,
Whatever they wanted to do, and they always just said, no, 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 we're not really about any of that. That's all just stories. But fast forward to 2022, after 11 years of asking them, Haunted US is starting to get moving. And we reach out to them for the purpose of writing the article and sharing the stories that way. And they say yes, they say that's something they want to do. So we stop in for an investigation finally at long last in January of 2023. And we invited the local paper over, and they had a reporter and a photographer there, and then the folks from the museum were there, and we started our investigation like we always do, just a classic EVP session, introducing ourselves to the spirits who might be there, and pretty quickly things started occurring. There's in the main lobby, there's kind of a hole in the ceiling where folks on the second floor can peer down and see who might be visiting them during the day. And multiple people reported kind of seeing a dark figure up in that area doing exactly that, just kind of watching and peering down at us, what we were doing. And of course, we went upstairs and no one was ever there. Um, but there was a point in time when we were in the servants' quarters in the back of the house, and we were trying to get in contact with someone who might be there, because there's some servant entity who's said to be there, and we were just trying to get in contact with them and learn more about them, just trying to get their name. And no one seemed to be communicating. We weren't getting much. We caught a almost cold spot draft back there, but we debunked it as a literal draft from, I think it was their old toilet system had just led straight outside. So as it was windy outside, so just shot right up out of the toilet at you. Classic 1800s
yeah,
engineering. Um, and we tried just about everything to try and communicate. And what ended up happening is, the co-author Brandon had a flashlight in his pocket, and it clicked on seemingly just kind of in his pocket. And he's like, okay, so he clicked it off and set it aside, and it clicked on again just by itself, just set aside a few moments later. And that's when we kind of started to wonder, is that them trying to communicate? So we fully clicked off the light and set it on the stairs, um, down just a small set of stairs from the house to the servants' quarters. Set it there, took big steps away, and we said, if you want to keep that flashlight, if you like that flashlight, just click it on one more time, like hit the button, click it on, and you can have that flashlight. And a few moments later, the button hit, it clicked on, the flashlight came on, and to this day, the flashlight remains in the servants' quarters of this house. We left it there, and the museum keeps it there. The ghosts did well by us there, so we did well by
Nice.
them. They get to
That's
keep that
awesome.
flashlight, and we get a good ghost story out of it.
Always nice to have a good ghost story.
Yep.
So also in the book you touch on like different oddity stores and locations throughout Wisconsin. If you were
Yeah.
to pick one to tell somebody to go check out, what would it be and why?
Probably it's called in the book the 45 by 90 geographical point. But I've taken to calling it the corner of the world because that's kind of what it is. It is halfway between the Greenwich Meridian and the International Date Line, and halfway between the equator and the prime meridian, something like that. A geographical, as close to a corner as you can get on a spherical globe. And there are four of these special geographical points throughout the world. The ones in the southern half of the world are both in the middle of the ocean. They're impossible to get to. And then one is in far, far west China, deep in the mountainous regions of China. It's so far out, it's like a 5 day hike to get out there. Um,
Jeez.
and there are no trails, so it's all just wilderness. And I believe only one person has ever actually done it, just for the purpose of going out there and seeing if there is any marking or memorial of that special kind of corner of the world point. And they got all the way out there, and there isn't. It's just wide open Chinese jungle. And then there's the fourth and final corner of the world in just outside of Wausau, Wisconsin, about 20 miles west of Wausau, way out in a cornfield, I think, an agricultural field of some kind. There is the last corner of the world, and it's way out in the middle of this field, but there's a tiny little gravel parking lot and a pathway that you can follow along the side of this field that will take you down the side of the field, and then you take a right straight into the middle of the corn or the wheat or whatever they happen to be growing at that time. And it's a flat kind of concrete and stone plaque on the ground, and it marks with an X exactly where the corner point is on the planet. And you can stand right there on the corner of the world. And there might be four of these points on the Earth, but this is the only one any human is really probably ever going to get to see. And you can see it right in Wisconsin, and it's a little bit out of the way for most travel
Mhm.
itineraries. It's out in the midst of rural Wisconsin, but it is truly one of a kind in the world. So it's always my go-to. Definitely go see that.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. I've never heard of those before.
Yeah, it's not something that's super promoted for some reason, but I don't know if it was the state or the county that built this memorial, but whoever it is takes good care of it, and it's a very interesting thing to see.
Yeah, it's kind of like the geographical center of the United States in Kansas, which is just like kind of out of the way, but it's just like there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The dead center middle of the country. It's kind of neat.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that. Was it last October, I think?
Hmm.
All right, so I just saw too that I think was it a couple weekends ago you guys went on a weekend road trip to like what was it 30 or 40 haunted locations?
Yeah, it ended up being, I think, like 21 or 22 different places over the course of about 4.5 days. We were doing a big road trip through Illinois and Missouri. And I believe we only ended up hitting one location in Missouri, Pythian Castle down in Springfield. And all the other places we ended up visiting were all in Illinois. But it was a pretty kind of arduous but interesting adventure. We got to see basically every nook and cranny you could want to see in Illinois, and some that you probably wouldn't want to see, but we saw those anyway. And it was super interesting. We started in Rockford at the Tinker Swiss Cottage and the Coronado Theater there. We basically made our way south through the state and got all the way down to a place called Cairo. I think that's the furthest south we went. And it's very close to the furthest south you can go in the state of Illinois. And Cairo is known for a lot of things. It's essentially a big old ghost town now. So it's if you're a urban investigator or just the kind of person who loves urban rust and decay, Cairo's the place to be. But they also have their fair share of ghost stories, especially in their local library. They have a couple ghosts supposedly haunting there, including one named Toby that I believe likes to pull books out of the shelf. So every librarian's dream. But we hit a lot of interesting places in Illinois, and we have probably another road trip's worth still to do in the state, just to stop at other interesting oddities and out there kind of stops that people would want to hear about in the state of Illinois. And if I had to pick a highlight from that trip, Pythian Castle was great. It's a pretty well-known haunted place there in
Yep, I've heard
Missouri.
of it.
Yeah, it's very big, it's got that right spooky vibe to it. But I would probably have to say the highlight of the trip was Pine Lawn Manor, which is in eastern Illinois, and there's kind of some dispute, or some uncertainty about where exactly the property got its start, but people seem to agree that it seems to have started as a motel of some kind and then transitioned into being a nursing home for many, many years into the early 2000s. And it's been empty at this point, abandoned for almost 20 years. But the owners who are, or the management who's running it now, is moving pretty quickly and fixing it up, adding, patching up the walls, fixing the windows and the roof. And it's just a fascinating building. And it's actually two buildings. It's the Pine Lawn Manor and the Sumner Care Center. And they're right next to each other. One's a nursing home, one's a care home for the physically impaired. But they both operated side by side for roughly the same period of time. And you can investigate them both all in one package. And it's just an experience to be there, because both buildings are very long and snaky hallways, and they just kind of meld right together. So the end result is this complex that just goes and goes and goes and goes. And you just take a left down a massive hallway, and it's another massive hallway. You follow that massive hallway down, and you take a right, and it's another massive hallway. And then you're halfway down that massive hallway, and you look in this random doorway that should be a bedroom, and it's another massive hallway full
Jeez,
of other bedrooms.
that's
And
crazy.
it's disorienting in the best and most fascinating way. So I'd say if I would ever visit another one of those places that we saw on that trip, a second time or a third time, even, it's probably that place.
So is it kind of like a maze in a way, like laid out like Indiana State Sanatorium, how it just like keeps going and sprawling?
Yes. In fact, it's very similar to that. For anyone who's familiar with Indiana State Sanitarium, you have two central buildings, a very old building and a very tall building. But in the middle, there's kind of a triangular shaped building that connects everything together. And Pine Lawn Manor is much the same. The main building, Pine Lawn Manor itself, is very much this central area that is spoked out with long hallways in almost every direction. But what makes it interesting is that it started out as a kind of a central hub in the middle with the entrance and the nurses station and then long halls on either end. that would reach out for patient care, but people built onto it as it operated. And so at the ends of these long hallways were originally that was it. That was the end. Then someone added an L shape at the end of one, and then a Z shape at the end of the other, and then two N shapes between the two that come together and form a strange polygon that you can really only understand from Google Maps. It's the kind of place where it's impossible to see the entire place, the whole complexity of it from your approach as you drive up to it and as you're walking around it. You kind of get the sense a little bit, but it deceives the eye almost how far it reaches. And so yeah, it's very very similar in that way to Indiana State. Everything connects together, and there's so much of that everything that it's hard to find the end if there is one.
Yeah, I've seen a few pictures of it and it looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, highly recommend anyone who's in the area check it out. And like I said, the management who's running the place doing the ghost hunts, all the money that people pay in to stay there, stay the night, do a tour or whatever, is going right into the rehabilitation of the building, cleaning stuff up and making it even better. So if you go back and visit in a year or two, it'll be even better than it is now.
Yeah, because I kind of heard that I was in a little bit of rough shape and a lot of mold and stuff.
It certainly is. As a matter of fact, when we were there, they were fixing up the roof, and I think they made a post about it not too long ago on their Facebook page. They had finally waterproofed a big section that was letting in a lot of water, and it's something that a lot of property owners who own haunted or abandoned buildings will talk about. And anyone who's owned a derelict or empty building probably knows that once the roof goes, everything else does.
Oh yeah.
And once you've procured a building like Pine Lawn Manor or a lot of other supposedly haunted places like Edinburgh Manor, I think Farrar had a same problem for a while, and Indiana State Sanitarium definitely is once you've procured a building like that has those problems, one of the very first things you have to fix is the roof. Otherwise, you can paint the walls all you want, but if it's raining through the roof, it's just going to get moldy on the new paint. So, their biggest and earliest and most major project definitely was the roof, because a huge serpentine building is not going to be
Yeah.
cheap to re-roof. But it looks like they're finished or just about finished with that. And um, when we were there, it was a mixture of them patching up the roof, and in fact, it was raining that day. It was raining, and we anticipated that there would kind of be puddles on the inside or rain seeping in, and there was not. There was not at all. The windows had all been fixed up and patched. The spaces in the walls that were taken down or removed for whatever reason were fully patched up. There there was a lot of rain outside, but there wasn't anything seeping in. And I had heard some stories myself prior to visiting that it was in kind of rough shape in 2023 2024. So I was kind of looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing what it was like this year. And at the very least, when it rains there, it doesn't rain inside the building. And the that's Pine Lawn Manor anyway, and Sumner Care Center right across the street, the other half of the complex, has come even further than that, because they now have bunk houses and things in that building, a full kitchen, and operational bathrooms, heat and AC, all the stuff that hotels and things have that ghost hunters really don't often see.
Right.
We're very used to sleeping in basements or something of that nature. Getting a single room with working electricity is a godsend sometimes. So
Right.
the amenities that they're building into the Sumner Care Center portion are very nice. And so once again, I'll be interested to see what it looks like in a year or two.
Yeah, one location that's like that is Poasttown Elementary in Ohio. When
Yeah.
we were there over the summer, a big storm came through, and like their library area, you couldn't even get into because water was just pouring through the roof.
Yeah, That's unfortunate. It is because that water will cause all sorts of other damages. So any support we can give these kinds of historical properties to fix those kinds of things is a benefit, because once you
Oh, for
fix that
sure.
thing, the fixes cascade just the same as the problems do. When the roof starts to leak.
Yep. Well, before we kind of jump into paranormal equipment here, what other plans do you have for the rest of the year for investigations, explorations, and the like?
Well, we're hoping to do another trip through Illinois, because we are hoping to follow up 30 haunted nights in Wisconsin with 30 haunted nights in Illinois. Hoping to release that next year sometime. And part of that, a big part, has been addressed by that trip we just took through north, south, east, and west Illinois. But I want to say that's only about half of it. So we've got another half to do. Lots of other spooky sites and oddities to stop at, and lots of history and quirky stories and spooky stories to hear and learn about and share with people. So we're looking forward to spending a lot more time in Illinois over the next few months. And from there, it's hard to say. Maybe Kentucky, maybe the Dakotas, maybe farther off. But for now, Illinois, and seeing what happens from there, seeing where it goes.
Yeah, one location for Illinois that I'd like to see in the book is a Congress Hotel in Chicago.
Yeah, it's on our list, and we didn't. One of the places that we haven't gotten yet that we didn't cover in this trip we just took was Chicago, because we're not close to Chicago, but we're not super far either.
Yeah,
So it's always something that it's on our list to do, but it's always convenient to do, and we want to do the kind of things that are further away.
yeah.
But yeah, the Congress Hotel is right up there, probably next to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and we have to visit these places when we go to Chicago.
Yeah, I love staying at the Congress. I think my daughter and I are going down Thanksgiving weekend. We're probably going to stay there.
Yeah, great. It's yeah, there are so many spooky places to find in Chicago, but that might be one of the better ones.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's jump into paranormal equipment for a little bit here for people that might not know about equipment and how to explain them properly.
Yeah.
So let's start off with the REM pod because I'm going to use this portion of the video for when I do my Sheldon investigation. There's going to be a lot of people there that don't know about the equipment, and I want to kind of have a little video where they can hear about equipment.
Yeah. So starting with the REM pod, what the REM pod is basically is a motion sensor. And at its most basic sense, it's a motion sensor. And you might think of motion sensors in a couple different ways. You might think of them in the James Bond kind of way, where there's an infrared laser that you have to, spray some powder on to see, and if you cross it, it'll make this alarm bell go. And the REM pod is kind of that, but also kind of not. So it will definitely detect when something is in its general vicinity, and it will make a lot of noise, and it will light up usually. But instead of it being a set beam or anything like that, it's an ambient energy, almost like a kind of heat, like the sort of heat that comes off of your oven. There will be an invisible sort of energetic heat that comes off of the antenna on the REM pod, and it will only reach about a couple inches, and all it will do is sit there. And if anything gets within a couple inches of that antenna, interrupts that electrical field that it's creating there, it will detect that, and it will make noise, it will light up, and it will let you know that something is interacting with it, even if no visible person or thing is there interacting with it. If you've ever worked with a musical instrument known as a theremin, it's very much the same kind of concept. Theremin is a a single or multiple antenna device that as you move your hands up and down and around it, it produces all sorts of tones and sounds. And the REM pod will do much the same. And so if you put a REM pod out in an open space and something is interacting with it when no human hand is, it begs the question, what is that?
Right, exactly. So, music box. I know there's many different variety of music boxes out there. Do you think like one is better than the other, or would they all be the same?
It when it comes to stuff like that, it comes down to the hardware in how they work. Because some music boxes are set up to be dependent on motion, like a REM pod or something like that. Others are set up to be dependent on temperature or environmental sensors, and at the end result is they produce eerie sounds when X occurs. And so to look for the best version of that, what you want to look for is how the device is measuring how X occurs. What sensor is it using to detect motion if it's detecting motion? If it's going off based on a selection of different variables, how is it measuring all of those, and to what quality is it measuring those? So music boxes are kind of a big broad category, and it could be any number of things that make one superior to another. It's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than the music that comes out at the end, so to speak.
All right. Let's talk about the spirit box a little bit.
Yeah. So you just want a basic rundown of the
Yeah.
spirit box.
Yep.
So spirit box is a classic ghost hunting tool at this point. It's been around for almost 30 years, at least 25 years. And the spirit of the spirit box has been the same essentially from the beginning. And what it is, and its base sense, is it's a radio. It's a radio that instead of you flipping channels from one to another, to another, to another, one at a time, it will just continuously sweep through those radio stations at a super fast rate and produce a lot of white noise, the lot of staticky kind of hissing sound. And the thought being is that through the quick succession, through all these different radio channels, all these different radio waves, and through the white noise that is produced from this process, spirits can, kind of break the audio barrier and speak directly to us, and we can speak directly to them. And so the goal of each spirit box, year over year, improvement over improvement, has been to speed up the rate at which these radio stations switch and remove the potential for regular radio interference. And these days you can get a spirit box that'll sweep 10, 12, or even 15 channels in a second, and that'll reduce a certain amount of radio interference, because if you're passing by a very active radio station, you're passing by it for 1/10 of a second. And so how much interaction are you really going to catch from that? And moreover, when you do your recording, if you're doing recording, you can often see when you analyze that recording where on the waveforms each station is being switched, because it makes a distinctive kind of buffering sound as it does that. And you can see if a voice is coming through, oh, that's over 5 stations, that's over 10 stations, that's over 20 different radio stations. And the chances of that being a single radio signal go down, and the chances of that being, something unexplainable go up.
All right. Where was I gonna? What was I just looking at? I got a little list here in front of me. EVP recorder. Sorry.
Yeah, so mentioned a little bit about the recording aspect in the Spirit Box thing, but EVP recording in general is kind of the same idea as working with a Spirit Box or doing almost anything else in ghost hunting, is you're trying to communicate with the dead. And when you're doing an EVP recording, it's kind of awkward to start doing, and it's kind of awkward to keep doing, but it's ultimately very simple. All you're doing is you're taking a digital audio recorder most of the time. It can be an old reel-to-reel. It can be any kind of audio recorder, really, as long as it has a microphone included in it. Because ultimately what you're going for is the microphone, because that is the crux of EVP recording, is that EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon, ghost voices, are right here next to us. They could be speaking here right beside us, but they speak in a frequency outside of what our ears can hear. And so when you get a digital audio recorder or any kind of audio recorder with a microphone, you are going to be capturing a broader spectrum of audio when you're recording with that microphone. So your ears can't hear the spirit voice, maybe the microphone can. And so the goal is to kind of bridge the gap through recording. And so you can ask a question to a ghost, what's your name? How did you die? Do you know where you are? What year is it? And your ears aren't going to hear anything. You can sit in what seems like an empty building, empty, dark, spooky, abandoned building, just asking these questions out into the darkness, into the seemingly empty darkness. And your ears will not hear anything said back. But if you've got an audio recorder with you recording and that microphone's broader spectrum is picking all that up, if you go back and you listen to that recording and you say, what year is it? You might hear a response through that audio recording after the microphone has picked up a broader spectrum of audio. You might hear a voice say 1945. And you had working years when you were doing that, and you didn't hear anybody say that. So where did that voice come from? And that's the big unexplained question to EVP recording, is you'll pick up things your ears didn't. And are they ghost voices? Well, maybe.
Right. So one that I've never used and don't really know too much about, so like a full spectrum camera.
Yeah. So a full spectrum camera, working with a full spectrum camera is it's not the kind of camera that you're generally going to want to take portraits or any other kind of photos with, because the photos and the videos will end up looking kind of strange. And that's because in a full spectrum camera, be it video or photography, what's happened is a lens filter has been removed from the interior function of the camera. And normally, the interior, like built-in lens of a camera, has these filters to remove infrared glare, UV this, UV that, and capture only the visible spectrum. Because much like an audio recorder's microphone can capture a broader audio spectrum, a camera lens can capture a much broader visual spectrum. And almost every single camera today can do this, but it's usually not visible. And a great way to test this is to take any camera, even your phone camera, and grab your TV remote and just aim the TV remote at your camera while it's on. And you can't see the little light bulb on the front of your TV remote come on ever. But if you hit the power button or any button on your remote while you're looking at it through the lens of your camera, that light will flash and come on. That's because your camera's eye captures a broader spectrum. Even though the image looks exactly the same as what you see with your eye, the photo you take isn't obscured or discolored at all. It's capturing a broader spectrum. And the reason it can capture all that and not look funky is because of the filters inside the camera. So you reach in and you take these filters out. The end result is the image looks strange. It ends up with a pinkish hue, usually a pinkish or purplish hue. But you've taken the visual spectrum that you can see, which is already heightened beyond what your eyes can see, and you've broadened it to the full extent that the camera can go, which is usually cut down for the sake of not making the image look funky. But ghost hunters, they don't really mind a pinkish hue. They want to see the spectrum. They want to see the far end of the UV. They want to see the far end of the infrared. They want to see where the spirits might be, because much like the EVPs, Their voices might exist outside the audio spectrum that we can hear. Their visual forms, their apparitions might exist outside the visual spectrum that our eyes can see. And so we want a camera that can capture as much of that spectrum as possible. And so you've got a camera that'll be pinkish hue and color as you're using it, but it's capturing a lot of UV light and a lot of infrared light and making that visible. So if a ghost or any kind of other anomaly is appearing only in the UV spectrum, in the ultraviolet spectrum, or only in the deep infrared spectrum, far out of what our eyes could possibly perceive, or even our cell phone cameras could perceive, this camera is going to see it. It's going to see a misty form, a full figure. It's going to see something beyond what our eyes or a normal camera will see.
All right. So speaking of cell phones here for a little bit, what are your take on the apps that they have for paranormal investigating on the phones?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it when we were talking about music boxes, but music boxes, it really comes down to the value of the hardware that achieves the X goal, which depending on the devices, if it's detecting motion, how quality is the device that's detecting the motion? And when you get into phone apps and things, it begs the question of how quality is the hardware doing the thing that the phone app is saying it's doing. And a big thing that phone apps say they do, that ghost hunters like to do, is EMF detection. And EMF detectors, actual purchasable meters, EMF meters, have sensors inside of them, sometimes many sensors inside of them to detect EMF waves. And they have electrical systems and computer systems in them to interpret those detections. Your phone does not have that hardware in it. It might have an EMF detection system in it. Its purpose is not to read out that data. Its purpose might be to utilize that data for its own internal systems, and that doesn't make it an accurate sensor for the kind of thing that a ghost hunter uses it for. That's if it has an EMF detector in it, which is a big if, because that's not its purpose. It's a telephone. It's a computer. Those are the systems it has in it. That's what the hardware's goal is. The X goal of a cell phone is to be a cell phone. It's not to be a ghost hunting device. It's a lot up only up until recently has it ever really had much sense being a camera. And you have to get one that has like 90 separate
Right.
lenses on it
Yeah.
for it to be a usable camera, because its X goal is still really telephone, computer, and not much else. And if you think back to the cell phone photography from 2005, the flip phone kind of cell phone photos that would
Yeah.
be grainier than a rice bowl at the end. That's kind of the situation that you're working with when you're trying to do advanced kind of technological work in the paranormal field with a cell phone. Is the apps want to sell, so they'll say a lot can happen, but ultimately what you're working with is still just the 2005 cell phone camera quality. It's stuff that really is struggling to get to where people are promising it can be or might be. So proceed with caution is all I can really say. If you're using it as a camera, that's to a certain degree acceptable. If you're just using your internal cell phone camera, years and years and years of work have gone into making these cameras functional. That is not true for almost any app on the App Store, and it's certainly not true for the vast majority of ghost hunting apps out there. So there's just a value to be had for the hardware built for a distinct purpose, and you're not going to find that in your cell phone.
So what do you think of, like, the investigators are out there choosing to use necrophonic over a spirit box?
Well, I would say it's all theoretical. Ultimately, there's nothing provable or demonstrable in the field. It's all broad experiment, but the logic there's more logic behind a spirit box's function than there is the necrophonic app, because the broader theory behind the spirit box is white noise theory, and white noise theory goes far beyond even the advent of spirit boxes and ghost boxes, because going all the way back to the invention of the concept of EVP recording, that you can use a traditional audio recorder and just capture strange voices and audio anomalies outside of our perceivable audio spectrum. It was already kind of theorized that white noise plays a role, that if you turn on a white noise machine or produce some other kind of white noise or other kind of noise like a blue noise, or something that might not be perceivable by the human sense either, but still produces sound that the audio recorder itself can hear. All of these different theories behind, if you produce some background noise, the spirit might have a better time coming through. And that's really ultimately where the philosophy of the spirit box comes from, is white noise theory that's been around for generations. And is it sound? Maybe not. Is it highly tested and experimented with over generations? Is there a sense of theory as to how and why it is? Yes. And how does necrophonic function in the same way? Who knows? Big question mark. How does and that's the other thing with these applications, is when you're working with hardware, if you're concerned that the person who produces the hardware is conning you, you can break open the device and you can look at what's in there. You can see at what is and what is not. When you're working with a phone application, you can ask the company that makes the device, how, or the application, can I see your code? Can I see the actual the body of your application, the things that make it work? And they can say no, which they do, and that's it. Like, you don't get to see how it works. And if you have a device that claims to be an EMF detector, you can crack that thing open and see if it has EMF detection systems in it or not.
All right. So, what are your thoughts on the dead bell?
The dead bell. I That's pretty new. And when I don't know something, I am happy to say I don't know something. I am unfamiliar with the dead belt.
Okay, fair enough. I have one, and it's kind of like, it's a hit or miss where it's like, sometimes it'll just like constantly ring for like 5-10 minutes at a time. I'm like, okay, it's like, should I turn the sensitivity down? Or it's like, so I'm
So
kind of,
is it like a kind of like a REM pod situation, kind of motion sensor, or what?
yeah, so it's like they can go up and like, you know, uh, touch it, like, ring the bell. So like it's motion.
Yeah.
But I like, for me, I'm on the fence on it. It's like,
Mhm.
I bought it and then the knob kind of got pulled off like the first time it used. So now it's like, I don't really know if it's accurate anymore or not.
Right. Yeah. And that certainly can play a role sometimes. I've Like any other product, you can get something and something can go kind of awry with it right away. They used to make, I don't know if they still make it. The same people who had made the original REM pod also made something called an E-pod, which maybe they still make it and just call it something else. But it was like a static electricity pod. It worked kind of clunkier and not quite as smooth as a REM pod. But if there was a static charge getting close to it, it would work exactly like a REM pod would. But one of the two I had just came with the antenna just shooting out at a very steep angle
Okay.
and not straight up out of the thing. And so I was always kind of concerned that the weird looking one was reading incorrectly. And so every once in a while, it might just be that the hardware is a little awry with the tool that you're using. But importantly, if it's down to the hardware, you can dig around and find out sooner or later. And
Yeah, I
that's
know. I think it's Ghost Augustine. I can't remember what it is, but it's like a mega REM pod. It's got like 12 different colors on it, and it's like gray, and it's like twice as much, and it's like pretty impressive. But I'm like, I don't know if I'd spend that much money. It's like, I think it's almost like $350.
Yeah, and another important lesson to be learned when it comes to paranormal equipment is there's a lot of stuff out there and it does a lot of different things, and one thing might do the thing in a different way or with more features or more settings than the other thing. But ultimately the tools that we use are ancillary to our own minds. So the most important things that we can have there is our own selves being present in the investigation. So the most important thing that I always tell people to bring is just themselves. And so if you have an EMF detector, it doesn't have to be super fancy. As long as it's got the hardware involved in EMF detection, you've got an EMF detector. It doesn't have to have 1,000 things on it.
Yep.
Uh, and if you want motion detection, you can work with a 10-year-old REM pod. It's still the same idea. It might not have a temperature detector and a this and a that and the other thing attached to it, but it'll still work all the same. So there are a lot of things out there, but we don't always have to have everything to make an investigation
Yep. Oh,
successful or to make the most of all of our collective times out in the field.
yeah. My daughter, her favorite piece of equipment is the EFM detector. She's like, always wants to make sure she has that when we get to a location. It's like, she goes, "Where's my baby?"
Yep, it's the simpler stuff, but it's the bread and butter of how things go.
What's your favorite piece of equipment?
When I first got started in investigating, I went out with a group whose whole thing was EVP recording. They had a couple other things, but their main thing was EVP recording. So they had like dozens of EVP recorders. They had the old, well, it wasn't so old at the time, but it's super old now. Like the micro cassette recorders,
Yep.
uh, which you know is something that existed just a couple, not too long ago. They were very common, and now they're almost completely gone. But they all took very good care of their old cassette recorders. They had an old reel-to-reel recorder, so they were all very, very into audio recording. And so when I first got into it, I was exposed mostly to the audio EVP side of it. So I have a special place in my heart for just the simple old audio recorder.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of a toss up between a music box and a REM pod, just kind of keeping it simple. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, I have other stuff, but it's like I tend not to really use a lot. But
Yeah.
I got two REM pods. I don't know if you can see behind me on the shelf. There's a REM pod way back behind me on the wall.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like up on that shelf up there. But
Yep.
back what was it, August? Was it August of 2024? I was at Edinburgh, and that was actually my nephew's. And when he was in the kids' room, he had the antenna snapped off on it.
Oh no.
And he's like, "Oh, I don't want it. I'm just gonna throw it out." I'm like,
Yeah.
"I'll take it. I'll try to fix it." Well,
Hmm.
of course, I tried getting the antenna back on. It wouldn't go back on. So I ended up super gluing the antenna back on, which the glue got inside and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So, anyways, fast forward to, was it June of this year? At our last time at Farrar, we got a haunted doll from a friend,
Hmm.
and now that REM pod works.
Huh.
So whenever we try to communicate with the dolls, it'll work just fine when they're around, but not in an actual location, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's very, very strange, but at least it works. At least they were
Yep.
helpful.
Yeah. So, any other advice for equipment for people that are getting into the paranormal, of like what you really suggest to use besides yourself, or just kind of, go with what your gut tells you?
Yeah, in terms of, beginner basic advice, a recorder is always, the a great first step. You can find them online just about anywhere, or even I think a few of the big box stores like Target or Walmart still carry that stuff. And it doesn't need to be super fancy, just as long as it's got a microphone, it'll work for EVP recording. And EMF detectors are another great, easy first step. There are a lot out there, but most at this point are relatively inexpensive, and they're really straightforward devices. And EMF detectors are great first steps into the actual interactive paranormal investigation tool, where you might have to decipher a reading, or actually use it as a technical device. But despite that, it's all very very intuitive, very easy to learn. And doing an EMF sweep can also help you debunk claims in a particular place, which is a big part of being a paranormal investigator, is finding the normal natural answers. And many times it's high EMF, putting people on edge, making them feel weird. And with an EMF detector, you can find that out for sure. So those are really the starting materials that can get you moving pretty quickly, and are relatively easy to find. And barring even those things, just a notebook and a pen, something to note down your experiences when you're in a place. If no other means of recording, you can at least do that,
Right. Yeah, because you
as
don't want
something to
to.
reference back later.
Yeah, because you don't
Um,
want to forget your experiences. That's for sure.
exactly. And so, yeah, it starts with a recorder, maybe a camera. I know a lot of people like to start with the video cameras and things, but and a simple EMF detector, and you are set to go. I would also include, of course, a flashlight. You don't want to go out in the dark without, you know, some light, because you never know what you might run into.
Bats.
Bats. So many bats. So
Always,
many bats.
always the
As many
bats.
ghost stories as we might have encountered. We've encountered twice as many bats.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
flashlights for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that is all I have for tonight. So I thank you again for taking some time and joining me,
Yeah, thank
and
you. Thanks so much for having me. It was a great time.
look forward to seeing what you guys come out for next for books and investigations, and hopefully we run into each other out in the field again.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.